So the first one we said, see Islam as a series of sciences, not one big topic. The second thing we said is go in stages. Start at the very, very beginning and move onwards and onwards and onwards. The third is keep a record of your study and have a plan. And the two of those can go together. A plan, a study plan, and a personal record of what you've studied. Now, the reason I say this, I think it's especially important because most of us don't have access to a teacher full time, in the sense that we are not sitting at the feet of our teacher with a notepad and writing down everything that he says. In that case, you don't need to worry as much about a study plan because your teacher is giving you everything you need. Most of us are part-time students. We study whenever we get time, whenever we get an evening, a little bit at the weekend. And we often change teachers. We don't have one teacher that we're glued to and we sit at his feet or her feet all day and everything that she gives us, we take it. That is easier in a way. But we often have many teachers. So we might have 6 or 7 people whose lectures we attend. And we're kind of learning also from someone on YouTube and maybe distance learning. And maybe we're doing a course here and a university, Islamic online degree over here. And we kind of have everything everywhere. So it's really important to have a single cohesive plan that you follow and a record of what you've studied. Because what you can do is 2 things. You can get your teacher to develop that plan for you in a way that makes it easy for you to follow, even if your teacher is not there. And the second thing you can do is you can keep showing it to people and getting feedback. So what I would do, you don't have to do it like this, but what I do, 1 A4 page per book. And the A4 pages are slotted into a ring binder. It can be on the iPad or whatever. It doesn't have to be a real one, but are slotted into a ring binder. And there are subject dividers. The subject dividers represent these subjects like tafsir, hadith, fiqh, aqidah, and so on. And within them, I've tried to order it easy book, next one, next one, next one, next one. The front page, I usually have a plan of all the books I'm going to study on that topic up to a certain level. So I have a folder for level 1, a folder for level 2, a folder for level 3, and onwards. What I can do at any one time is when I take the book, books have different ways of learning them, right? So you can read a book, you can learn a book from a teacher, you can have like a private sitting, or you can go to a public class, or you can learn it online, or you can watch a video, or listen to audio. And every one of those that I do for that book, I will write it down on that piece of paper. So I will say, this book, which is the book of Kitab al-Arba'in al-Nawawiyya, the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi. I have studied it from this person, on this date, at this center, and I finished up to hadith number whatever, and I read this book which explains it, and I've watched these videos on this topic, and I keep like a record of what I've done. Then when I see my teacher, who I don't see all the time, and I see maybe a different teacher for each topic, I say, Sheikh, this is what I've studied, this is what I've read, this is what that I've been through, where do I go next? He said, right, next you need to read this book. Next, I see you haven't done the explanation of this person. You need to finish that as well. Because you may do a book multiple times. Because even within books themselves, there are levels. There is someone who explains the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi in one sitting or in one day. We did it in kalima, I think, in 2 days. And there are some that explain every hadith in a day. So 40 days. And there are some that explain it even longer. There are some that have 60, 70 or 100 hours explaining those 40 hadith. So even in one book, you start by studying it a very basic way, and then you move up to the next level, and then you move up to the next level. And so when you show the teacher, the teacher can look at your study plan and can say to you, you need to do this and you need to do that. And this is particularly relevant when we talk about my next point, which is integrating Arabic and English. So if you've taken on board what I've said about these 3 points, you're going to notice that there is a difficulty involved. And that is that to really get that in each of those sciences, you need to read books in Arabic. Because let's be honest, you might not even barely find a book on Usul al-Fiqh in English, let alone be able to read one, or let alone be able to read many of them. So that being said, what I suggest for people who are not Arabic speakers is that what you do is you have a, basically you have a blend. You start by you're learning Arabic, and as you're learning Arabic, you're reading books in English. The more Arabic you know, the more you switch over to books that are written in Arabic. By the time you've done 3 years worth of books in English and you've finished all the books that there are to finish in English, then in terms of, study books, then you can move on to Arabic, because by that time your Arabic is good enough to transition yourself from English into Arabic, especially because the beginning books you're going to do in Arabic are going to be simple ones. They're going to be basic ones. They're not going to be very complicated. So that is what I suggest people do. You start by learning Arabic, and while you're learning Arabic, you're studying these books in English. Alhamdulillah, most of the books, at least at a basic level, most of the level 1 books are available in English. And maybe half of the level 2 books are available in English. And none of the level 3 books are available in English, or almost none of them. So in that case, what you would do is you would get yourself on a good Arabic program. And while you are learning Arabic, you're finishing off as many books in English as you can. And then you transition from English into Arabic, and you continue on in Arabic as best you can. We'll come back to Arabic in a moment. So we said about having a study plan, showing the study plan to your teacher, and keeping a record of what you've done, because that allows you to evaluate, where am I on this path? And ideally, you should have a teacher develop your plan for you, because your teacher knows which books are best to read and can put together a plan that you can easily study and benefit from, and also can give you feedback on that plan. There isn't one study plan that is right. That's not the case. In fact, different teachers from different places in the world with different perspectives will give you different plans. And I'll give you one example. I took one study plan from my teacher in Saudi, and I took another one from a student of knowledge from Somalia. The one from Saudi was about 3 times bigger than the one from Somalia, okay? But the one from Somalia, it was expected that every book you will study it down to the last comma and full stop, and you will, like, down to even the fact that you'll answer questions on grammar in every book that you study, and you'll go into it with a microscope. And the Saudi one, it's expected that you'll just skim over each book, but you'll do more. Neither of those two are, one of them is not right and one of them is not wrong. It is simply down to what that particular teacher, the style that they have. So one style is you study very few books. Maybe you finish level 1, 2, and 3 with only, in every subject, you might only do 3 books or 4 books. But each one of those books, you do it down to the point where every comma and every full stop, you study it. And the other style, you maybe do 10 or 12 books in that space, but you don't go into as much detail. You skim over them and you learn what's missing from the first one you get in the second, what's missing from the second you get in the third. But the point is that the teacher gives you a set or a series or a plan to follow. And if you follow that plan, you end up having solid understanding in every sub-science of Islam. Now, back to my first point that I made. It's not necessary for you to study in great detail every one of those sciences. But we did say that it's needed to have at least a basic understanding, if not an intermediate understanding, in all of them. Once you get beyond that basic intermediate level, it's up to you if you want to push it further or if you want to suffice yourself with, look, that's it. What I've taken is enough. Again, in consultation with your teacher, you ask your teacher, I feel like I've done enough of this. It's not my main, interest. I'm happy with what I've done. Is it okay if I stop here? Teacher says, yeah, you can stop there if that's what you want to do. And other subjects you have a real passion for and you take them much further into till you're reading like books that are 50 volumes or 30 volumes or something like that. So there's a lot of progression that you can make. Just to give you an example, let me give you an example in something that we might be a bit familiar with. Let's talk about hadith. How would this progression look in hadith? For me, if I was putting together a study plan for someone in hadith, I would start them off probably with the 40 hadith of Al-Imam An-Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala. So that's 50 hadith in total, including the addition of Ibn Rajab. It's 50 hadith in total. They are quite short, easy to memorize, and they are very, very important in the religion. In fact, they're the most important hadith in the whole religion. I would start with that. I would tell my student to memorize each one of those hadith in Arabic and to study the understanding of them in English, but not necessarily to memorize the understanding, just to memorize the hadith themselves and to work on the understanding later on. I would then take them, after the 40 hadith, into a book of ahadith al-ahkam, the hadith that relate to the halal and the haram. Now, depending on the energy of the student, I'd give them two choices. If they're a little bit, if they're not so keen, like they just want, they're happy to go on the slow road, I would give them something like Umdatul Ahkam. So it's a collection of ahadith which relate to rulings in Islam. Hadith on prayer, hadith on fasting, hadith on zakah, hadith on hajj, hadith on marriage, hadith on, and so on. If the student had a bit more energy and really wanted to memorize a lot and study a lot, I would tell them, go to Bulugh al-Maram, which is the same kind of book, but there's a lot more, the content is a lot more. And we study Bulugh al-Maram, we teach it on a Wednesday in Sharifat al-Attar Masjid in Al-Barsha. So beginning to end, I would tell them to do Bulugh al-Maram. Now that's not going to it's not going to be quick. It might take them 3 years to finish that book from beginning to end. They're doing other things in the meantime, other topics in the meantime, but if they're doing it once or twice a week, it might take them 3 or even 4 years or even more to finish that book from beginning to end. And memorization would be according to the person, how much energy they have to memorize. If they have energy to memorize, really, they really want to memorize, start them memorizing Bulugh al-Maram. If they don't feel the energy to memorize Bulugh al-Maram, give them something smaller. Give them just the topic of ibadat from Umdatul Ahkam, just the topic of salah and zakah and hajj and fasting, for example. And then we would probably take them to Al-Lu'lu' wal-Marjan, فيما اتفق عليه الشيخان, which is a book called Al-Lu'lu' wal-Marjan. It's available also in English. In that which Bukhari and Muslim agreed upon, in all of the ahadith that are agreed upon by both Bukhari and Muslim. Memorize them and understand them. And then, if they still have energy after that, I would say you're done from the intermediate level. If you still have energy, start doing the 6 books of hadith from beginning to end. Muslim, Al-Bukhari, Abu Dawud, At-Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, beginning to end. But that's for those who have more energy. So the point is, I would put together a plan that looks something like that. I might put some things in between and some books and explanations, but I put a plan that looks something like that. The student will do their best to follow that plan. Now they might themselves not be able to study all of those in classes. For example, if they're living in Dubai, there is a class for Bulugh al-Maram. So you can go to the class. You don't need to study it from YouTube because you have a class that you can go to and you can sit at. And this brings me to my next principle, which is not every method of seeking knowledge is equal in weight.